Baruch here with genConnect.com, and we're chatting with Nate Silver from 538 and the New York Times. How are you, Nate?
I'm good, thank you.
You have become, I would say, on this campus right now, the #1 celebrity. You're coming up in every single conversation I'm having. I just interviewed David Gergen, who called you the new Gallup. And on our way over, you were saying that one of the great ways to really achieve success and greatness in the field is to carve out a niche for yourself. How did you carve out this niche?
Well, so I think it's easier after the fact and go back and say, well, I had this and that plan. You know, in reality, it was more about being dissatisfied with the way that, you know, back in the day, first of all, baseball was covered. I was one of the guys who kind of in the Moneyball era was working on the sabermetric side, but then seeing some of the same really errors of thought and judgment when it came to political coverage. And, you know, if you want something better, then not the easiest way to do it, but the most satisfying way is to do it yourself and kind of actually put into practice some of the ways that you would go about looking at the world differently.
But how do you find what that niche is? What the thing that's going to get you passionate and get you seen and heard?
I don't think you can fake passion. So
Yeah.
usually it's, in my life, it's been a number of hobbies that kind of became careers for a period of time. You know, with baseball, I played poker actually to earn my living for a brief period of a couple of years.
To earn your living.
To earn my living,
So you're pretty good at poker.
I was pretty good, although it was more like, this is my other motto, right, is find something that other people are bad at, right?
Right.
Back a few years ago, there was a big boom in poker activity around the world. So you went from having, you know, 300 players at the World Series of Poker to thousands and thousands. And so it was a lot of new players who were not very good, and that meant if you had a little bit of skill, you could do pretty well and actually make money. Most poker players don't make money over the long term, but maybe 5 or 10% do. So so if you're in that top 10%, but then it got much tougher after a while.
Because more people got good.
More people got good, or the bad players, eventually they get sick of losing money, or they don't have any more money to lose, and they drop out. So the ecology of the system will change a bit. So yeah, it's like partly, I think people are always looking for the next big thing, but a lot of the time they're going to the last big thing that someone else already innovated in, and then they're kind of trying to duplicate it, but not getting a head start. And when the competition's already very rich and robust, and it's hard to get ahead that way. You know, usually make your biggest gains at the outset, when you're kind of on the favorable side of the learning curve, right? And then diminishing returns, maybe if you're in finance or something, you have to pursue the extra 1% return that can add up. But it's easier to find areas where there are kind of biases and prejudices and groupthink and traditions that aren't very effective at actually analyzing how the world works and then trying to break through them instead.
Now, from poker to politics, what should we be talking about right now? A lot of people are saying that it doesn't make sense to be talking about 2016 yet. What is the most constructive conversation that we can be having?
Well, it depends on what your objective is, right? Whether, you know, I mean, I think there's certainly more at stake in 2016 than in 2014. The reason I say that is no matter what happens in 2014, you're still going to have a Democratic president. You're almost for sure going to have Republicans in charge of at least one branch of Congress, one chamber, I should say. They could win the Senate. I don't think they'll lose the House, though, and that means you're still going to have a divided government. So that makes 2016, where everything controls at stake, the bigger year. I think it's not necessarily as early as you might think to talk about 2016. The reason being, the way campaigns work now, it really takes almost 4 years to run a presidential campaign, right? The visible part is much shorter, still way too long for most people, right? But but there's a lot of groundwork and legwork and prep work the candidates have to do to position themselves, to raise money, to build teams that really starts almost as soon as the prior election ends. And this year in particular, or 2016 in particular, where you have an open nomination in both parties, pretty rare thing. Only I think 4 or 5 times prior to this, since World War II, have you had this occur. So that makes it a really exciting year, but also means that the jockeying positioning begins even earlier.
Right, which is why so many people are already talking about it so passionately.
Sure, I mean, look, everything that Marco Rubio is doing right now is through the lens of what if I want to run for president in 2016. Right. Everything that you know, Scott Walker or Chris Christie or a lot of these people are doing, they are at least they're not all going to run, but they're at least using that as a consideration. So it begins to affect and govern behavior even right now.
How about Paul Ryan?
Paul Ryan is a guy who's been a lot quieter, I think, than other people whom you think might run.
Surprising. But do you think he would
Surprisingly.
leverage the attention that he's already
Well, like
received?
I'd say Paul Ryan is a guy who, number one, he is. If you talk about the next in line, I don't totally buy this theory, but you know, he clearly was the vice presidential nominee last time. I don't think helped Romney a lot, but also didn't embarrass himself. He did fine.
And he could have,
can
being
raise-
put in the public eye like that.
Yeah.
There's so many opportunities.
So he's been vetted. There
Right.
weren't really any vetting. There was this minor marathon thing, which is kind of, you know,
Right.
these silly stories, but he survived the vetting relatively well, right? And he can raise money really fast if he wants to. So he's a guy who can have the luxury of
waiting it out, yeah.
But he's not going to someone, there's no one in the GOP that can clear the field the way that Hillary Rodham Clinton could on the Democratic side.
You just gave us some great advice on achieving greatness in one's chosen sector. What has been the best piece of advice that you've received so far?
I don't know. I try not to listen too much to.
Really?
You know, well, actually, I think one thing that was really interesting. I'm not sure I put this into practice, but I saw Elon Musk, the Tesla guy,
Yeah.
at the TED Festival,
Right.
TED conference, excuse me. And one thing he said is that it's really important to listen to negative feedback, which I guess is obvious. But one thing that I've discovered, and you know, people here at Aspen are very successful in their fields, but as you're more and more successful, you get less and less negative feedback. You become someone's boss, and people are deferential to you, or maybe at most they're passive aggressive, right?
Right.
So I think creating an environment where you can get negative feedback that's good and honest, and then react to it. I think it's a problem that a lot of successful people have. You see it on political campaigns too, where you know, candidates will hire pollsters and consultants and staffs who don't want to piss off the candidate, and so they won't say anything that might help the candidate correct a wayward campaign. So I think that's a really useful piece of advice that seems easy, but it's hard to do in practice, and it's harder for people who have, in some sense, achieved more in life.
Nate Silver, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for more with Nate Silver, be sure to check out genConnect.com.